my mother shooting my dad in the chest. It's like, oh, if my dad can beat my ass, like, what's a woman gonna do to me? I had my last fight in the UFC at 35. Came out of retirement, fought last year. I used to be so nervous about sharing, and I would trickle it throughout my career. I would talk a little bit about things, but, I never wanted people to know.
Welcome everyone to this episode of Never Alone, Never Again. I'm Johnny and joined as always by Krista, the sober Barbie, my best friend in the world. And we are delighted today to have ex-UFC fighter, current bare knuckle fighter, Jessica Evil Eye. Jessica, how you doing?
Hello, guys. I am doing great. I'm super hot down here in Florida. It's been like super blazing hot and humid down here. So right now we're hiding out inside, spending most of my days in the gym.
Absolutely, it's been hot everywhere. It's been wild all over the place. What's new? What's happening? What are you up to lately?
Gosh, you know what? Enjoying a lot of summertime, right? Because I'm turning 40 next week. Just like Krista, I have my birthday. So I have my birthday on Tuesday. So this kind of week is super light for me. I'm kind of feeling like for me, when a year, I don't know how any of you guys feel, but after a year of my birthday, I feel like that's my personal New Year's. It's like when I can kind of culminate from like what happened from my birthday last year until now. And yeah, just kind of reflecting and enjoying this week. Looking to schedule a fight. If it doesn't happen September, where they're talking about in December. So definitely itching to, schedule another competition. I know my years in this sport are numbered. I am turning 40 and there's going to be a time to turn that chapter and really focus on some of my other things in life that I've really just always put back on the back burner because fighting is fighting. If you can't focus on it fully, I feel like you're not giving your, your fullest amount or, ability. And we're pros, right? It's fighting. It's not dancing. It's not a beauty contest. Like it's physical, violence. So
How
yeah.
many, so okay, so in your career, how many fights have you had?
So I've had 30 pro fights. I've had 10 amateur fights, roughly, or like 8 amateur fights. So roughly around 40. There's been a couple like amateur exhibitions in there that were only 2 rounds, but yeah, almost 40 fights.
And this is over a 20-year career?
Yeah, I had my first fight when I was 20 years old. I had my last fight in the UFC at 35. Came out of retirement, fought last year. So yeah, crazy, right? It's been
That,
22 decades.
that's wild, especially considering Krista, who's been in 60 fights.
Yeah.
None of them ever in a ring or.
I have a record to show too.
She was amateur bare knuckle before it was popular.
What's crazy is I've always said that, but like I bet you some of the girls at the bars that, have got that, 3 beers deep in them, they would kill it in this industry. They'll fight
I
you harder than anybody.
I dated an MMA fighter. His hands were registered and everything. I went to jail for throwing a chair at him.
Oh yeah. Well, you know what the craziest part is like, unfortunately, no matter what, even if he's got the chair, if you threw a chair, they're like, it's her fault.
Yeah, they couldn't believe it. I
So
did it.
you did like 2, 3 big fights a year.
So some years it was three. You know what I mean? And then sometimes there was one year I think I had four. Um, but yeah, I'm starting to like get to that point where like, we're only fighting once a year or if not, and it's starting to, just really put me in a position to realize what's next. Like what am I going to do next? And oddly as crazy it is that throughout my career, right, alcohol, I would not drink, right? Because there would be multiple times that I'd be going through training camps, 9 weeks not drinking, right? 9 weeks not drinking so that I could be, true and ready and sober. So throughout my life, there were always these times of drinking, not drinking, drinking, not drinking. That, it's kind of the way I've looked at it throughout my time of sobriety is like it's fight camp the rest of my life. Like I'm sober for the rest of it. you know? So that's kind of been, an interesting like way that I've looked at is that like, you know what, even if I'm not fighting, even if I'm not actively competing at the highest level, me treating my body like it is, isn't what will be most important. And then not only my body, but my mental health, because those both go hand in hand. You have a bad body ache from the years of training, and then consuming alcohol, like it only makes it worse.
So you've had a lot of your focus lately has been on you're actually working on trying to help other athletes who've had traumatic brain injury. Um, tell
Well,
us.
I think
Tell us.
it's really the biggest thing is not about necessarily helping them, but helping them understand that traumatic, like we have years have went through so many traumatic brain injury that just like an injury, we need to nurse it for a while. Like after all the years of putting it through that, you have to remember you can't keep putting your body through that of all those years of physical pain, dehydration of your brain, not only through weight cuts because you're physically dehydrating, but like, the alcohol as well. That one of the biggest things, eventually I think, I'll be able to open up my biggest dream would to be able to help other athletes. I think I'd mentioned you guys with my Golden Eye group, right? Being able to start a nonprofit that would specifically tailor to veterans and other athletes. I'm sure you guys don't know this, but recently in California, it went up to, I believe, their like Supreme Court for fighters and athletes, combat athletes that live in California to receive a retirement program. So basically, there would be a foundation that would allow anybody who competed at the highest level to have some type of retirement program. Because I don't think people know that most athletes, as well, or I should say mainly in the UFC, are mainly professional fighters. They don't have health benefits. You're considered an independent contractor. You have to account for all your accounting. You have to account for all your own medical care. You have to account for your aftercare, so eventually having a place for them to go will be something very special for me. It's in my long term pipeline. But I think that mostly recently, and that you guys follow me and others that have followed me, is hearing me speak out about not consuming alcohol. I mean, right now, and I actually was gonna wait to tell you guys till then, but I think I officially have a friend, and I won't say her name until time comes, or maybe you guys would want to talk with her. She's a fellow UFC fighter that is truly ready to take that journey as well. And me talking about it has really inspired her. And, my other childhood friend who went through, I mean, I've known him since I was like 5 years old and literally known him my whole life. Our dads were best friends, right? So the same things that happened to me happened to him a lot of times. And, he's finally sober. He sent me his tracker. He's 2 weeks. He's still in the early stages, but to both of them, I'm like, I'll be your sponsor. You can call me anytime. Like I felt very entitled. I felt very like, entitled to stand in that position. And I think that's going to help kind of keep setting the tone of things that I'll get to learn about helping others this way, not lose weight, not learn how to punch somebody, but to how to get through a process like this. And I think, in being sober, no journey is linear, right? We know that. So being able to help fighters who know, like, I feel like we're a little scared of things, like we're somehow an abuse victim. Most likely that's how we found our way to mixed martial arts. To help them say like I understand, like physically I understand, like emotionally I understand. I went through the same machine you did. Let me show you what worked for me and see how consistent I've been with it. So,
That's amazing, Jessica.
yeah.
Dude, and that makes my heart feel so good. Nothing helps us more than intense work with other people in recovery. So, dude, that's
Well, you don't know who's watching. Or
Yeah.
who's paying attention, and you're leading by example, and they're like, I want
Hmm.
that too. And that's awesome. I
I
love
think
that.
that a lot of the people that, and someone actually recently sent something to me from when I was in high school, right? My freshman year, and like things that I said, like, I just want to be happy and live in my authentic self. That's like what freshman year high school Jessica said. You know what I
Oh,
mean? So when I think about that, like living in my most authentic self, like how I'm finally living in my authentic self, it's taken a lot of years to stand in sobriety, stand and say, look, like, I never felt like I had to promote myself as a person, right? For my fight league and just for promoting of stuff. But now again, I feel like I'm actually promoting something that feels more genuine to me. And that's talking about my sobriety, talking about how I'm doing it and why I'm doing it. But then people are looking at me in 40 and going, Jessica, how do you look better at 40 than you did at 30 and at 25? Like, how does that happen? You know, I've had a lot of them say that to me. A lot of the women, which was like, a way for me for once to connect with women and it not be like I've because of my sport, I've always connected with guys. Probably because of trauma. I connected with men more than women. The lack of female presence in my life was never there. So for women to finally come to me and be like, "Hey, how are you doing this? I want to know." I'm like, "Yes, I got the girls."
So
So it's been
relatable.
it's been exciting.
So relatable. Johnny
Yeah.
wouldn't know, but no, but I totally understand that. That's
Yeah.
why.
All right, so I want to kind of dive into addiction in sports and stuff like that because I don't think people they don't think about it that much. They watch these UFC matches and they see two people beating the hell out of each other, and they don't really see the months and months of training. They don't see this, they don't see the injuries, they don't, or maybe they hear about it, but Dustin Poirier, he's been all over the news, right? And you know him, and he is a UFC fighter, and he got smashed and tried to fight a police officer. This is, it seems like this is a very common thing, with addiction. Mike Tyson, he has spoken very openly about utilizing drugs and alcohol with training, with everything else. I'm an '80s kid, so right, so the WWF/WWE/ whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Now all these documentaries are coming out about all the drug use, all the steroids, all the painkillers, all this, all that. I want to hear your take on this, about athletes and using drugs.
It's kind of an elaborate thought, I guess, or a way of explaining it out. Let's just start out with feeling like football players and those and combat sports athletes such as boxing or MMA, right? You're seeing traumatic brain injury more in them, not only because of the fights themselves, but the consistent training year round of training that way, right? Football has seasons, right? But during their season, they're back to back. They're competing every single week. And that again alone is constantly hitting your brain and creating traumatic brain injury, right? And if we just look at anything, right? Let's look at a knee joint, right? If we have an issue with our knee joint, we have things that we got to look at. Is it muscular? Is it structural? Right? Or is it, or is it, we'll say, is it arthritic from years of use, right? We have to identify the problem, right? But most times, most athletes, number one, don't want to speak up about having any type of weakness. So they start to take things into their own hands, right? And let's talk about where their brain's getting hit, right? So, like, I'm not a doctor, never claimed to be, but I do know what research I do. And when I do know that someone could tell me I'm right and be able to probably speak it in other ways. But the frontal lobe of your brain controls all of your impulse, all of your decision making. So when we talk about what alcohol does to the frontal lobe of our brain, let's talk about not only alcohol, but hitting that same spot over and over and causing micro bruising, micro scarring, small fractures, in the skull that creates inflammation, right? So we're talking about like, long-term use, that the way that we stop CTE from actually happening is by minimizing traumatic brain injuries and how we heal them. And I think what happens is a lot of these fighters, right? And I could speak on our lifestyle the most, is there's a lot of binge and purging, right? And that's with a lot of things. Binge and purge meaning alcohol, food, sex, alcohol, drugs, all of the above, because there's something about the martial art way of restriction. But you'll see these guys kind of go into like a Buddha like state, no sex, right? No alcohol, no carbohydrates, train, right? That discipline, so much that they crash and burn after fights. And, something you were, saying, Chris, says that, a lot of times is that they ride these heavy roller coasters, right? I'm in the best shape. I'm the man. I'm winning the fight. And then say I lose, instant depression. Not only did I lose in front of thousands of people, right? Now, not only did I hit my brain and I'm like, wow, I'm depressed because, yeah, I lost the fight, as a very valid feeling, right? Now my head hurts from getting punched. Maybe I got knocked out, whatever. I'm going to go make myself feel better with that beer that I restricted for all those weeks, right? That's my reward, right? But in all reality, the reward would be to not do it, to hold that like same discipline, how good you felt going into the fight, whether or not you were victorious or you were the loser, right? You should still be proud of your discipline. Show yourself like, wow, dude, I collected all of those days. I'm a rich man. I'm a rich woman. But unfortunately, I think that we think that part of that inability to do that lies in mental health and that ability to make the right decision, And unfortunately, with Dustin, the situation, Dustin's heartbreaking, right? Ex UFC champ, someone I fought in Abu Dhabi with years ago when he fought Conor McGregor the first time. Met him, an incredible guy, donates to multiple foundations, in multiple ways, right? Homeless, he does a couple things with homeless, does a couple things with animals. He's very, very giving about his ways, but privately has been struggling with alcohol, and it's talked about it. If I stop fighting, where's going to be my balloon? Where's going to be my emotional balloon I hold on to that keeps me grounded? And a lot of fighters talk about that, right? And it's heavily the male. I think men struggle with it a little bit more because women, right? You have your children. And not say that we don't, but their struggles, right, seem to be much larger in retrospect. So Dustin has talked about it. Well, he's sponsored. One of the UFC's biggest sponsor is Bud Light. And tell me why he loses his sponsorship due to having a drunken incident with a police officer, one that, didn't end in any violence. It didn't end in anybody getting hurt other than Dustin and all the people that love him and care about him, right? Ultimately, Dustin's the one that got hurt the most, right? Like this is affecting him. So I think what happened is that you've seen a lot of UFC fighters start to speak out because when Bud Light dropped him, how could you sponsor such a big athlete, have them in your commercials, sipping beer, yeah, cheers, everybody, good time, good time. But the first moment he has a bad moment ever in his life after everything he represents, you're done with him. You're
Yeah,
absolutely
and
done.
they exploit him too with the
Well, that's what I'm
video.
saying. So
Like,
wait a minute, you can use him to gather the crowd, but if unfortunately he joins the crowd and makes a bad decision, now you're against him. Where's the protection, for that? And I look back at just all of these athletes that have alcohol, private alcohol, Conor McGregor, who everybody knows. I'm sure your followers and listeners, no matter what, everybody knows, the Mac, right? One of the things he spoke on, he had Proper 12, which is an Irish whiskey brand that he said he went from never drinking to having massive amounts of bottles in his house. That next thing you know, he's leaving the house with 2 bottles every time, and we all get it, right? Like, I want to be like, I understand everybody's insight on alcohol, right? We want to capitalize on making sure our family can make money, our life can be, fruitful. But is it really worth it? Right? Connor just blew out his ACL again, embarrassed himself. Dustin Poirier embarrassed himself. Now, instead of people looking at you, and unfortunately, let's face it, guys, we live in a social media world. Now, you put yourself in this emotional box. You made a mistake. Now you feel like everybody's looking at you and everybody hates you, and you got to stand in that, like, and in all reality, I think that when it really boils down to it, if they could roles reverse and say either I'm not drinking or I'm not taking that sponsorship deal, they'd look back and be like, wow, if I could see myself now, I don't think I'd do it. I don't think I would, they would take that, right? They'd find another way, So I think that what we've seen, just lastly speaking on it, is Sean Strickland, another big name in the UFC, held a bottle and talked about it. You know what I mean? And he was just basically saying like this has spirits in it, you know what I mean, like this is causing people not to be who they are, and this bottle will abandon you in the time that you need, but when you think you need it, you pick it up and you grab it. You don't need that bottle, you know what I mean, like so. It was nice to see other fighters start to speak out. I think it's kind of leading into like me really figuring out my lane of like how I really want to speak on it. I think I said this with you guys previously. I want to see that 6 month mark so I can be like, told you 6 months, not a problem because I'm doing these things, or, I want to be able to speak on it because I have seen, other fighters go in and out of sobriety, and then it gets lost. Nobody cares. So nobody checks on them to say, hey, look, man, you said you were sober. Like, how you doing with that? Because in all reality, they want them to drink. They want them to party. They want that because that's the crowd they want to bring around. Right.
Dude, yes, I'm telling you, you're amazing and so smart with all this stuff, with all the brain injury and the frontal lobes, and I'm telling you, this is all so interesting. But I'm going to ask you, Jessica, for we talked a lot about other athletes. Let's talk. Let's bring the focus back now. Why did you start using? And when did it become okay to do all this?
You know what is like, I remember in high school, right? I tried my first ever like Boone's Farm. You know what I mean? I was like, this tastes okay. Like, I'm not really into alcohol, right? Had a beer. I was so small, like, have one beer and would be just vomiting, right? Like, I couldn't really drink, right? Like, unfortunately, I think I've always had a sensitive stomach, throughout just my own issues, right? And alcohol never really set well with me, right? So in my early 20s, even throughout high school, like I was known as like 420 girl, right? Like I'm the one that was just rolling up, hanging out, like being there. That was never my choice. But whenever I became of age where it could be a choice is when it started to really introduce itself, into my life. You know what I mean? So around the age of 21, I would say like, cause again, I could, right? I could drink now. It's something I could just do. Um, but throughout I would say my 20s, like, right, there were never any like crazy warning signs that maybe throughout all the years of not only my childhood, but the years of training that, hey, wait a minute, Jess, these are starting to stack up. You're starting to know some behavioral changes in you. You're starting to not feel good after days of drinking. You're starting to notice more concussion like symptoms on training days, right? So we're sparring on Mondays, but I'm out drinking on Saturday. You know what I mean? Like our Mondays were consistently for sparring. And I look back and I'm like, oh my God, Jessica, we'd get hammered, out on going out on Saturday. And then I would go in and get my face, plowed in. You're sweating, right? So not only are you sweating for the training session of, 5 pounds of already fluids, now you got a dehydrated brain, right? Like, so I didn't take advantage of my youth the way that I probably could have. That as I hit into my 30s, and then I started to see some behavioral changes in myself. I started noticing that the person I was becoming, unfortunately, when I was using alcohol, was the worst parts of my father I had ever seen. And I started to feel like I started to see that more, unfortunately, with myself, that slowly started. There was, a couple incidences from the day that I retired in the UFC back in 2022 that I got arrested. I got arrested twice, wrecked my motorcycle, wrecking my motorcycle and having, problems with, my partner was the main fact of like, I can't do this to me and my future children, to my boyfriend, to my friends that are worried about me, that now they're like, wait a minute, is Jessica dealing with traumatic brain injury like the rest of the athletes who are starting to abuse alcohol, drink to excessive levels, right? There are parts of me that I would say it was slightly OCD, right? Like I want to drink the most amount of drinks. Like how many tequilas can I get in? Like how drunk can I get, and stay conscious to the point that I'm no longer there and I'm no longer the person I like to be. And as we were talking in the beginning, I find so much more enjoyment being in control of myself and knowing people need me. Oh, it tickles me. I'm like, yes, you need me. You want me to talk to you? Like, of course. Like that sense of being needed has filled such a joy in me. So for me, alcohol, I'd say since 2022 is when it really started to become a serious problem. I think living in Vegas, unfortunately, and I know some people, will tell you if you go to Vegas, it can eat you up. But during COVID, right, I was in a household full of people and we drank a lot, and we trained a lot, so I can say that maybe hit it beginning its stages of going upward till, recently, being like, that's it. I'm done. It's an easy decision for me, you know?
I love your story, and we've talked quite a few times now. And it's the we our stories are so different, right? And we all have different stories. But when it comes to the disease of alcoholism and addiction, it's all progressive, right? And it nobody nobody starts out as a bank robber. They got to go rob some candy from the convenience store, and then they get away with it, and then they go and do something else and they get away with it, and then they're stealing cars and they get away with it, and then we keep graduating to different
Yeah.
things. And the progressiveness of our disease, we didn't start out with alcoholic and addictive behaviors and tendencies. Well, maybe we did, but it was a good time. High school was fun.
Yeah.
It was, there were some good parties, but then, and that's the cunning, baffling, powerful part of it, because we forget
Yeah.
about the bad times because we're still thinking about those good times. But sooner or later, with addiction and alcoholism, the progressiveness gets to a point where we're out of control. And
Yeah.
I know for myself, when I think of powerlessness, alcohol and drugs made me do things that I would have never done, say
Yeah.
things that I would have never said, and hurt people I would have never hurt.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to make their mom cry.
Yeah.
I made my mom cry. And when I'm waking up and calling her from a jail cell for the ninth time, I'm not thinking about that because I'm selfish and all I'm caring
Yeah.
about is me. And I don't think about a little blonde-haired 4-year-old. I used to have blonde hair when I was 4 years old. And when I was a little kid, my mom looked at me and she didn't think, oh, this kid's gonna grow up and be calling me from jail, but I did. And it's that progressive disease, and I didn't think I was gonna wind up there, but we did, right? And that's the we all come to that conclusion eventually. And your story is just a great example of the progressiveness of the disease. It didn't start out bad. And it's more the solutions, right? Pain. We're in pain. All these things are happening. My body is struggling. I have to find a solution to get through. And being having an addictive personality, if I take one pill and it makes me feel better, 2 pills are going to make me feel even better. And then
Yeah.
3 pills, now we're having a good time. And 4 pills, I don't want to feel anything at all. And that's what we remember, the solutions. And so Jessica, this has been awesome. And I want to kind of transition. Well, before I do, Krista, what's your take on powerlessness and Jessica's story?
Um, I first off, I see so much passion about wanting to help others. It's contagious, and I love it so much, and I can relate so much to it. Um, and like your birthday will be next week, and so
Yeah.
are you class of '04?
'05, because I was held back. But yeah, I know I'm '05.
Well,
I know I got
we
held
grew up
back.
the same, like the same era,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's no one talked about like getting sober. There was no sober people. No, they were
No.
influencing the party and the good times, and I didn't think it was going to lead to a problem. You don't until it did. Like Johnny
Yeah.
was just saying, like you don't start out robbing the bank. I mean, we were robbing the candy store as a kid in high school.
Yeah. No, it's
Um,
crazy.
but I just the powerlessness, like I there were there the illusion of control. Like I thought I had control of all this, and I didn't. Like it slipped out of my fingers before I knew it, and I was going to jail and I was getting arrested, and I still didn't know I had a problem. People were enabling me left and right, and they didn't realize they were enabling me. They just thought it was just harmless or whatever, and it wasn't. It was a lot bigger than we all knew. And
Yeah.
I can relate so much to your story. And when you said you started realizing like you were kind of like the characteristics of your dad, like that just hit me out of nowhere. Like my parents were never drinkers or anything, but there's characteristics, and I'm like a second generation.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather was an alcoholic, and my mom would always be like, "You're gonna be like Grandpa Joe. You're gonna be like Grandpa Joe," and it never like clicked. And until
What?
yeah, yeah, that's
It's
wild.
crazy because you almost have to wonder, right, Nick? I guess it depends on how spiritual you are, but like, how they say things skip generations
Yeah,
and the
yeah,
cycle breakers and
yeah,
I've been very estranged from my family pretty much throughout my whole life, but my father was, my dad. He was the one that raised me, good, bad, or indifferent. I will always have love for my father, no matter what, and God rest his soul. He's where he is supposed to be, and he is happily sleeping, and I'm happy where it took us. Unfortunately, I know this isn't like something I would say that people could understand, but my father was never going to change. He was never going to change. There's nothing that was going to help him get to a place. And I didn't even, when I look back at it, I remember thinking at times I could never imagine what my dad would look like old. And he didn't die old. He was, 56 years old when he died. And, it's to me it's kind of crazy because I never could envision him old. Never could. And my relationship with him is so much better now, and closer. And at times I feel like he's speaking to me. And I feel like even too, after I got in the bike wreck, I'm on the back of my guy's motorcycle, we see a shooting star. And I literally feel like my dad was like, kid, like, I'm proud of you. Like, I'm glad you're alive, but like, I'm gonna tell God to close his eyes and not blink for you anymore, right? Like, you need to make good decisions. Um, so to say that, yeah, I think that unfortunately, I love my father. I idolized him, but I also was very scared of him and knew exactly who he could be. So he taught me those traits, and I think that, like you said, you don't really grow up to be a robber or that. But I do think that I was shown things and I was shown how to be mean and I was shown how to be aggressive. But it was also, there was like that ability to kind of hide behind, I'm a provider, I'm a good person, my kids are fed, they got the nicest clothes on them. Don't worry about how I treat them at home kind of mentality. And that's how I feel like a lot of people do, and they struggle with alcohol. It's like, oh, I'm good. It's like the little duck where their feet's just like, you know what I mean? But above water, they look fine. But in all reality, you're just trying to maintain not only what people think of you, but who you really are, right? And when I had to look back, like, wow, I am my father. I in most proudest ways, but I don't have to be him in the ways that I hated him for. And unfortunately, the alcohol version of me was him at his worst, and I hate that. And it's like so opposite of, who I wanted to be.
And
Such a
here's a few words from our sponsor, Never Alone Recovery.
Never Alone Recovery is a resource center for anything addiction or mental health. We are a toll-free number. Feel free to call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 855-831-9996. This is available for someone who's suffering, also parents of those who are suffering, colleagues, whoever. Feel free to call at any time. Krista, what else do we have?
We host 5 free Zoom meetings a week, recovery meetings. We host a recovery TikTok live every morning, and you can find us on all social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, and all of it will be in our description.
Such a huge form of denial is by putting it into the perception. It's the disease of perception, and I think, okay, everything's good over here, so I must be doing fine. And just like you said, the with the ducks, that's the duck on water. They look beautiful, but underneath the water, those legs are kicking 1,000 miles an hour, and
Yeah.
it's one of
Struggle
those.
and serenity are not compatible.
No, I mean they're no, but they're the beautiful thing about it is like that struggle is what makes the serenity beautiful. But it's
Yeah,
like you said, you can't do both at the same
yeah,
time, right? Like unfortunately, it's just like anybody. It's like if I gave you nutrition advice, unfortunately, you can't eat ice cream if you're trying to lose weight. The serenity will be restriction, and then you get your treat, so to speak. So, I think that again, we've used alcohol in society as a way to reward ourselves. And again, I'm all about like reward yourself in other ways, other healthier ways, right? Or, again, find what it is that's going to help keep you on track. And unfortunately, alcohol is never going to fit into that, on an emotional level. But like let's face it, guys, it's a dehydrated for your brain, right? If we dehydrate our brain lacks good function, makes it easier for traumatic brain injuries, makes it easier for concussions. It inflames your liver, inflames your gut, creates autoimmune disease. Like I could just go on with so many things of why it's bad for you. Like dementia is from sugar in the brain. What is alcohol? Sugar. And what happens to most people when they start drinking, that blackout stage happens, right? Like it's just, I always want to entice people to think of it that way, right?
Jessica, I'm feeling offended. I'm feeling attacked right now, and I'm not going to let you talk about ice cream this way anymore. I mean, I'm taking a stance right now. I am this podcast. Let me make an announcement real quick, Krista. This podcast is pro ice cream. This is
Yeah.
I gave up sugar. I gave up sugar. Well, I have a
You know
little.
what's
I ate all those cupcakes you sent me. I did, but I did give up sugar.
You know what? I'm proud of you if that's what's going to help you like reach your best self, right? Like I love that. Good for you. Like good job, right? Like and that might be beneficial to you. Like me, listen, I love ice cream, but I limit cuz again, I'll eat a tub of ice cream. Like I do everything very
Extreme.
extreme.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, so sometimes I have to like be cautious of it and remind myself I have good coping mechanisms that again are like good self-talk. Like, all right, just don't eat the whole thing. But there was none of that with alcohol. That was just like, oh yeah, get another one.
But
Get
sugar's
another
the
one.
first thing is the most first thing addictive we'll ever have. It's the most addictive thing. I read that somewhere.
No,
I'm
it
pretty sure, but
100%
it's
is.
true.
No, it 100% is. I don't know if I'll have to send this to you. I was actually reading a study recently because I do notice, right? And I guess this would be like some of the side effects because you had asked me last time I talked with you, like, how's my recovery going? And my head like went completely off track. I'm like, my recovery, how does he know about my shoulder's been hurting me? You know what I mean? I've been in rehab for it. So I was like, how does he know? But in all reality, I wouldn't say I'm in denial of like being in recovery because I've done this before, but this is going to be long term. But I have noticed I do get anxiety, my anxiety triggers a little bit more. And I was reading a study with my coach about using sour candies, hard candy, sour candies to trick your brain when you're going through anxiety or when you're having anxiety, right? And I don't really have social anxiety, but there's been a couple times that I was like a little uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Like I was out this Saturday and I found myself like I brought honey sticks with me because I got a little uncomfortable and I had started to feel like I had anxiety because everybody was drinking. And it wasn't because of everybody else drinking like that I wanted to drink. I didn't want to have to defend myself against a drunk, right? Or get offended by somebody
Yeah.
being that way. And then me being like, hey, excuse my language, but don't F with me, man. Like, please leave me alone. Like, don't mess with me kind of mentality, right? Like, because they're so drunk. We were at a show and I was some family friends and it was a little heavy metal show and everybody was just tanked out of their mind and I wasn't.
Okay, so I want to. So this is a great conversation, especially about sugar, because I mean, I'm a sugar junkie, and we talk about addiction, we talk about solutions, and when I'm depressed, Oreos are my downfall, and I and still are, and the world is so pro sugar. It's ridiculous. But we're gonna get off this topic because I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about your UFC career. I want to talk about what got you into fighting and where did all that start?
Like we were you were saying, is like, you don't plan to be a certain way, right? But you are an element of your environment, right? And I was around, my real mother was never in my life. There was a lot of toxicity between her and my father. My dad and her drank, and, a lot of different things happened between them. One resulted in, my mother shooting my dad in the chest. He survived. But then, my mom, multiple car accidents from DUIs, losing full custody of me and my brother at a young age. And, it's what brought me to fighting. What brought me to fighting is I didn't want to be like my family. So to go back to say what you were saying, I didn't want to do drugs and alcohol. I wanted to be Jesse Joe, the sports person. I was in every sport. I was in 4-H. I didn't, like I said, I couldn't even drink when I was younger. So for me, it was like I didn't mind it. But like I said, I would, hit cannabis and, consume, marijuana. And I would say, like, there was probably, I was cocktail waitressing at a strip club, which was very up the alley of my family: motorcycles, women, drugs, alcohol. And I had served a table to a group of fighters, and they basically told me what they did. And I was like, what? People actually really do cage fighting? Like, this is back UFC 10. We're renting them from Blockbusters back then,
Huh. Huh.
2006. You know what I mean? So I was cocktail waitressing at the club, had met them, went home that night, gotten in and into like I wouldn't say a full on wreck, but hit a curb from driving drunk, got myself home, and I was like, man, this isn't the life for me, right? Like it's starting to show me something that is very similar to my life. So I mean, the first time I ever was in a strip club, I was 14 years old. My dad was married to his second wife, was a dancer, and I went with her all the time. But I never wanted to do that, right? I was never one to expose myself. I never had any dreams of that. But so I wanted to find a way out, right? I think I'd mentioned this too. A drunk driver hit me when I was 16 years old and broke my back, ran me over. Me and my father were both in the accident. I don't know if they tell you guys that.
No.
Yeah, when I was six, so sorry, like slipped my mind. I was 16 years old. My car broke down on the side of the road, and a drunk driver ran me over physically, broke my back. He
Mm.
broke T3, T4, and both my hands. Pinned my dad between both vehicles. So yeah, alcohol has never been a thing for me, guys. Like I really mean, I stayed away from it even when I had tried. And I'm sorry, I thought I told you guys that. There's a big article called "Eye of the Tiger" that I should have sent to you guys to show you it. But from that moment on, right, like I knew that, I'd gotten a large settlement from the accident, which caused me not to speak to my father, right? Unfortunately, money got in between us. I was of age. I was 18 years old my whole senior year. So my dad basically told me to get the fuck out. So I left. And that's when I was cocktail waitressing at that strip club. I put myself in college at Akron University for business technology, paid for it all outright. I look back and I'm like, why did I put my money? I put the whole thing
Wait,
in
you
it.
went to Akron University?
Yeah.
That's where
Yeah.
we were. We were just there for Founders
Zips.
Day. AA.
Yeah. I was a zip. Yeah. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, that's where I end up, like I said, got in that, mini little accident. And I was like, I just remember those guys telling me, hey, dude, you seem like a tough chick. Right? Actually, what they said to me, hey, Thunder Thighs. And I was like, I was still so young and angry, like in life. So I don't know if the guys were trying to be flirty, but I was like, how about I tell none of the girls to come over here and you guys can look like lame sitting here? So they were like, no, 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 we're sorry. we're fighters. And I was like, well, what do you mean fighters? Like, what does that even mean? You know what I mean? You're bar fighters. They're like, no, we're cage fighters. We have a gym. Like, come check it out. So I sat on it. I went into work, I think maybe the next 2 days, and I just was like, you know what? I'm done with this. Like, I went and got a job at Dick's Sporting Goods as a bicycle tech, and I went into full time training. I had my first fight in 2007, and I went full into training. You know, I wanted out of that scene where it was going to be like my family. Like I said, I really wasn't drinking or consuming alcohol, often. But yeah, that was my first fight. I had 10 amateur fights after that day. So 2007 to roughly 2011 or so.
Jessica, I've never seen Krista off put as much as I just have now with that line. Hey there, Thunder Thighs. That was
I
that.
hope you kicked their ass.
Oh,
No.
I was super mean to them. I was like, I hope you know, I was like, I'm going to make sure none of the girls come over here and talk to any of you because just so you know, I'm the ones that tell them where to go. You know what I mean? Because it was, and granted, it was like, to be very honest, guys, when I look back at it, like, it was just such a crazy experience.
Well,
But
they
like,
knew what they were doing. They wanted to get you like mad to
I
come
feel like,
fight
yeah.
at the gym.
Yes, I
It's a
feel like they
sales
saw
pitch.
something in me too and definitely showed me that they were literally like, I don't know, it's very crazy because there were so many other people there to serve their table. Like they literally pointed me out, were like, "Hey, come here." You know what I mean? Like so it's crazy how it all works, but essentially, when I came into fighting, right? One of the first things I said was like, "Oh, if my dad can beat my ass, like what's a woman going to do to me?" What is she? What could a woman? And again, I didn't have very many. I mean, I had a couple. I have very good female friends. I'm still very close with. But I was like, what? What could another woman do to me, knowing that a man did this to me? So I started training with men all the time, and the fact that those were my competition, for the longest time, I felt like I was going against women that weren't as skilled as me or as traumatized as me to perform the way that I did. And then as the sport grew, when Ronda Rousey came along and the UFC really was like, hey, we want women, more women started training the sport and being like, wow, this is a place for me to go learn how to protect myself, right? One of the reasons I work out the most is that, I want to appear as like I'm not a person you can't victimize me. You can't make me your victim of a bad day. You won't put your hands on me. You won't hold me down. You won't strangle me. You won't do any of these things to me because number one, you won't be able to grab me. You won't be able to catch me. Like I use that as ways of like allowing myself to be like, there's nothing I'm scared of. Because in all reality, the man that I was most scared of throughout my whole life was my father. But then because of only being scared of him, I became fearless of anything, cops, people, motorcycles, fighting. I became fearless. And that's when I realized, right, again, that night on the motorcycle, I thought I could handle anything. I could handle alcohol. I could handle one of the biggest motorcycles I ever been on. And in all reality, I couldn't, but to go back to that, I came in with that attitude. So there was nothing that was going to stop me, and everybody was like, oh, the pretty girls always have it made in life. And somebody said that to me the first month I was on the mats. And I was like, dude, I have been like almost raped. I've been abused multiple times throughout my life. My dad was charged with a child endangerment felony against me. I was hit by a drunk driver, right? I've seen my mom once in the last 20 years, like, oh, pretty girls have it made. Oh, what pretty girls are? Wait a minute. I just don't tell you the things I go through because people like you will judge me or people like you will just say, oh, it's okay. You're a pretty girl. Oh, you've got it made. You'll be all right. That I spent so many years suppressing that now I live more authentically in that. Like, yeah, I did. I went through these things. So yeah, if I'm a pretty girl that went through some shit, like, then if I can teach anybody how to go through it, I will. But that's the short and long version. The longest version I could give you of what really brought me into fighting was an outlet, a safe place, wanting to put myself in a position to never be victimized by a man again. And unfortunately, the person that did it most to me was my father. So I have struggled with relationships, up until, the one I'm most recently in. So, thankfully for that.
Okay.
And we're both sober, so that works. That's why.
So you reached the pinnacle. You reached the top of your sport and retired from it. What made you get to the top? So I mean, and you have to have natural abilities at some point to be a top athlete. You have to have some sort of natural athletic ability, and then you have to put in the work, and you have to have the drive, and you have to have the with withstanding of pain and all these different things. What was your big attribute that allowed you to get to the pinnacle?
You know what? I wish I could say back now it was my mental stability, but it wasn't. That's what actually ruined it. But I think one of my biggest abilities was I physically knew how to take pain. It was hard to, like, I was only ever finished. I got finished one time ever in my career. And anybody would have told you, like, Jessica is not going to stop. She's not going to, right? She's not going to give up on herself. She's not going to not fight till every last bit of her is exhausted. And when I look back at that, and I talk about it even with my coach now, is that what makes a fighter some of the best fighters is to be able to withstand that pain, but also to withstand that pain while their body's actually truly getting damaged, right? Like, not often will you see a fighter quit on the stool. Unfortunately, they did recently, but the guy was severely beat up. And I hate to sound like this person, but I think that there's people that have been through some very abusive, traumatic situations where you knew if you went out, you weren't waking up ever again. So you got to stay awake. And for me, keeping those eyes, no matter what's happened to me, if my head got rattled, my first thought, I had this. I call her my little Charlie Brown voice because when I was fighting, I would hear her being like, "Oh man, Jess, oh man, that was a good shot. Okay, that was fast. Here she comes again. Oh man," right? Like talking to myself. And there were times, my very first UFC fight, that I got rocked so bad. And I was like, "Move, move. Just keep your legs moving. Keep your legs moving." And I've had that self talk in a traumatic situation before that I had to say that, right? Like, for instance, my father, the day that we got hit on that, when I got hit by the drunk driver and ran over, I knew my dad kept a gun in the car. And this is the most relatable moment I have to this because I think about it so often of just my ability to really, even out of my bike accident, I was up on my feet being like, "Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh." And my boyfriend's like, "Dude, you didn't go out. Like, I can't, how are you standing right now? You're bleeding everywhere." But I had the wherewithal and emotional stability to yell to my father because I knew my dad was going to go shoot the guy. I knew it. I heard him say, "If she's dead, mother, I'm going to kill you." Right? So, as crazy as that sounds, when you know how to have that level of consciousness and self-talk, and in that moment, in fighting, it felt normal. Unfortunately, in alcohol, because I was running from that little voice, I didn't have it. But when I was sober, conscious in the moment, that ability to talk myself through, like, "You're not going to die, Just. This is a fight. You signed up for this. Yes, it hurts. It's going to go away. We'll get some ice on it later. You're okay. You're okay." I think a good example of that would be when I got my forehead split open. Just not panicking. I knew I was hurt. I knew something was very deeply wrong. I knew my forehead was split, all the way across, but you'll be okay. That's just like that ability, I guess, to endure pain would have probably been the best. I wish I was where I was now and could go back and fight some of those fights back again. But
I have so much regret. I wish I got into fighting. Like,
yeah.
I can relate so much to what you were saying. I can endure pain.
Mhm.
And I'm like, why did
Mhm.
I get arrested and get in trouble? I should have put it in a better
You know what
outlet.
though? During your time, like they weren't even talking about women. Like they didn't even want to. Like
Yeah.
the guys literally said to
Uh,
me, "Yeah, are you fishing for a boyfriend?" And I was like, "You think I need to be in these dirty, dingy walls to find a bar back boyfriend here?" And
I would
that's
have been
literally
fighting
how
all
I
the
said
men with
it.
the way they've talked
I
to
don't
you.
want to. I don't want to say I said in that mean way, but I did because I go, "No, I'm here to learn how to fight, and I want to be
Yeah.
a professional fighter."
Yeah.
And they literally wasn't until after a few months of me not going away, they're like, "Damn, this girl's not going away," And I was
Wow.
super persistent. And again, like, I'm tough. So like they literally would throw everything but the kitchen sink at me. And I was still like, that's all you got? That's
Yeah.
it? You could make it a little harder. And they're like, oh my gosh. So at that point, that's when they finally took a liking to me. And again, I spent the next 15 years at the same gym before I decided to try a new gym for a little bit. So it's like, back to say we were doing at your age, like I was so fortunate because there was so many. It didn't get
Yeah.
popular until 2010
Yeah.
roughly.
I
you
remember there
know
was like one girl wrestler in our high school and everyone was like freaked out. And now today, like girls are on the football team and doing everything men can do. But
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
100%, 100%. And it's, and again, my journey of being in this industry will continue, whether or not that's a coaching side, again, the nonprofit will be something I will always do, but I do want to find a way into the sport where I feel most comfortable, and whether or not that's coaching, managing, and helping people just not get anything taken advantage of them. There's just things you don't know.
Yeah.
And you have to experience it to truly know it, because there's so many people that it'd be like having somebody, again, it's hard to be like somebody who's like helping you through alcoholism when you've never had a drink. It's like it's hard to feel relatable. You appreciate what they're saying, but there's just something about
Yeah.
somebody experiencing what you've experienced. It feels more genuine. Your body, like it's like whatever happens in our chemistry, our bodies and brain are more adapt. At least I think for myself, I can't have a big old fat coach telling me like, oh, this is how you do a squat and a grapple. I'm like, "No, you've never even done that. You've never even done that. Like, how can you tell me you've never even done it?" And
You?
it's so, yeah, you would have
Well,
been a great fighter.
I know. I still
What
am.
would have been your fight name?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, so the next time I need to know your fight name.
They called me 9 iron in rehab because
There
that's
we
what ended up
go.
getting
I mean, Chris,
sober, a 9 iron.
yeah. You need that, and we need to know what your walkout song would be.
Yes, Johnny, we got to come up with that. What would your
I'm
fighter
writing
name
these.
be,
I'm writing
Johnny?
these questions down, Jessica. Don't worry.
Yes.
Yeah, this is good. This is
This has
good.
been such a good conversation. You speak so well on your experience and your past and like you're for someone who's been hit a bunch, your mind is right though,
But you
and
know what? I'm doing the right things, Chris. I
yeah.
really am. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
again, not having alcohol has really made a difference with the brain fog. I do peptide treatment. I do red light therapy for my brain. I do it twice a week for 15 minutes, like to help rejuvenate, brain cells. And anytime somebody's telling me, like, there's a couple of different studies that they're using with psilocybin, which I'm excited to see what their results will be with traumatic brain injuries. So I
I
like
wonder if
research.
all this works from all the brain damage I've used because of drugs and
A hundred
alcohol.
percent, 100%, a
So many, like,
hundred.
so many jokes when we talk about Krista and brain damage. But I have one last question for you, Jessica, and this,
Yeah.
this is a question that I think everybody can answer. And where did you learn the biggest lessons? In your wins or in your losses?
Oh my gosh. Every fight was different. I walked away no matter win or loss feeling like a different human being. Um, but you know what the biggest are you talking about, like, overall probably my biggest lesson, or just the win loss? Which one gave me more?
Yeah, it's your question to
You know
answer.
what? Okay.
It's my
I would
question
have
to
to say,
ask.
what's crazy it is losing sent me into panic. It sent me into my worst states of myself. And I don't like that. So there was no lessons to learn. I couldn't even, I was so frustrated and mad. But when I won, I was like, oh, that was right. I did that right. And I was able to focus on what I did right. When I lost, I was like, I don't understand. I did all these things right. But in all reality, when I look back at some of my losses, I think I just had a bad mentality, emotionally bad mentality. So I learned the most. I really did. I learned the most about myself through wins, because I was able to operate. Again, I didn't feel like I had to celebrate anything. I'm like, wait a minute, I won. That was the celebration. When I lost, it's like I wanted to eat my feelings. I wanted to drink my feelings, or people would want to go out with me to try to make me feel better, and that always entailed alcohol, so
And you're a winner, so that's why you came out on
yeah,
top.
heck yeah, I'm a winner for life now, baby. I mean,
That's a
I
good
feel like
question,
that.
Johnny. That was a good question.
I feel like that 1% of person that, we are now, right? Like we're choosing ourselves. We're choosing ourselves mentally, physically, metaphorically. Like we are choosing ourselves for the first time in our entire lives.
Yeah.
We're not choosing the bottle first. We're not choosing whether or not it's food. And, those were things that I had issues with. I mean, people see me now. I mean, I used to walk around at 150 plus pounds because if I wasn't drinking, I would abuse food. I would binge eat, So, yeah, we're just over here managing and coping and putting myself in a system that I feel that works for me, you know?
Jessica, I'm telling you, this has been so awesome. I mean, thank you for answering all my questions and, stuff like that. But I want to ask, and just to kind of close this thing out, is what does the future hold for Jessica Evil Eye? You're going to be 40 in a few days, how much longer are you gonna do the bare knuckle fighting? Have you thought about this? No. What's the future hold for Jessica?
The future for the first time I feel is like I've said this to a couple. I said I'm not spending the next 40 years as hard as I spent the first 40. We
Mm.
done. Right? That staying over there. These next 40 are going to be able to allow me to live in that. And you know what? I've got some things that I'm working on. One is going to be the Golden Eye group. That will be a nonprofit that eventually I'm making friends with people that are already in nonprofits, so I'm getting the advice and I'm getting the right guidance, right? And I'm not trying to take it on alone. I don't do that anymore. I don't try to take on everything by myself. But between that and bare knuckle, I've been back and forth with them. As I said, look, guys, like I want to be a mother. I want to have children. I want to step into that realm. So my years are numbered here. The next couple years, I really want to capitalize on the mentality and the mindset. But really, for me, I think that for once, and I could say this very openly, I don't have a plan fully. And for once, I'm not trying to micromanage every aspect of my life to try to control not having anything bad happen. Because the more that I try to squeeze it and control every single thing, I miss something or I miss out on an opportunity. And lately, little things have just been flowing in that have been enormously big blessings that have really put me in a position to be like, wow, this is what it means to sit back and let life happen while you're doing all the right things. I eat clean, I work out, I focus on my mental health. I talk about things when I'm not feeling good. I'm there for my friends when I can be. And to be very honest, some days I just let myself sit on the couch and rest and do nothing. Just do nothing. I've never been able to do that, guys. I have so much energy and anxiety and that anxious energy that it's been a lot for me to learn how just to be like, just sit on the couch. Don't do anything. Chill out for the day, Jess.
That's amazing, and Jessica, I thank you so much, dude, because you are an inspiration, to women, to people in recovery, and to everyone who comes into your life. You're just such a breath of fresh air, and I want to thank you for coming on here, Krista. I know you got some thoughts.
This was awesome. I think we would have been best friends in high school.
Oh,
I just know it.
100%.
I'm
100%.
grateful you came on here and shared a lot of this. Because there's like this is gonna. I hope a lot of people see this because
Yes.
just like going through all this with no offense, Johnny, but men like a lot of women have a lot of trauma when it comes to dealing with men in their past and childhood,
Mm-hmm.
and not a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people are talking about it. I hear it in the rooms, but that's a safe place, and it's not talked about enough. And I'm grateful that you were brave enough and courageous enough to share a lot of this, and it's going to help so many people, and that's what we got to do. We got to help the next person, and this was really good. I'm going to be processing this for a minute.
Wait,
I appreciate you guys,
yeah.
and I think that more people like yourselves, and even supportive, like even random followers on my page of me being like them saying like Jessica, we're so proud of you, been longtime fans, like You look great. You can tell that you're not drinking. That I used to be so nervous about sharing, and I would trickle it throughout my career. I would talk a little bit about things, but I never wanted people to know. And now I just don't, it's not like I care if they have an opinion on me, right? Like, because I don't have opinion on other people. And I think at times, unfortunately, I had opinions on other people because I didn't have the highest opinion of myself.
Yeah.
Right now, other people were going to feel about my story and the shitty things either I did while I was drunk or while people did them to me. And then they're like, wait a minute, like, why did you stay around? Like, why did you stay? It's like, well, you don't understand. It's like my eye starts to flicker, but I'm like, you don't understand trauma. Like, it was my dad. And like, what was I
Yeah.
supposed to do? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, I appreciate all of this, you guys. And thank you for giving me a platform to share it on, and I think that again, please keep doing this. Please, anytime you reach out to other athletes or other people that again could just talk about the amazing things you do, please do. You guys deserve that because you're helping a lot of people. And, you know, this is just something that the world needs more of right now.
Amen.
Absolutely, absolutely. But very well said. And thank you again for coming and being on our podcast. And thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next time.